Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations on your election as Speaker of the House. I'd like to start by saying that I'll be sharing my time with the member for Drummond. It's an honour for me to rise in this House on behalf of the citizens of Abitibi-Témiscamingue, and that's why today I want to thank the people of my riding for the confidence that they have placed in me, giving me the opportunity to sit here and as their member, and I will defend their interests on each and every day. I also want to highlight the work done by Mr. Marc Lemay, who represented the riding for 7 years and worked for the citizens of Abitibi. Mr. Speaker, the government and I have diverging views on the kind of country we want to build, and we can see that in the budget, what we want to see in the budget. We share the same passion for our community and commitment, and I hope, Madam Speaker, that the Minister of Finance will kindly listen to the message that's come from my community. Because on May 2nd, communities like mine didn't simply choose a new Member of Parliament. They sent a clear message to the Canadian parliamentary system. They told us we needed to change our old ways of doing things and we needed to do better. In my riding, more than 50% of the people voted for the NDP and voted for families to be a priority so that no one is left behind. As I'm humbly accepting the mandate that I've been entrusted with, I can't say that this budget does anything to help families and people who have been left behind. This budget places ahead of those people the interests of banks, great big polluters and companies who are sending our jobs abroad. Until the day prior to the election, I worked in a health center as an intensive care nurse clinician, and I want to salute all the people working in this health center, in the social services center of Aurore Boreal, who are working hard every day to preserve what we have, a public health care system. I also want to join all other New Democratic members in saluting the work of healthcare workers in our country. We also want steps to be taken for the reimbursement of studies and loans by doctors and nurses working in rural and isolated communities. First of all, the budget that we have before us completely avoids taking into account healthcare professionals who are working tirelessly for our healthcare system, nursing auxiliary nurses, inhaler therapists, medical radiology technologists, lab technicians, occupational therapists, and others I don't have time to mention. Secondly, the offer put forth by the Minister of Finance once again doesn't help experienced people who are dealing with our healthcare system and have been for a number of years. There are a number of people putting in very long hours. The measures to attract new professionals are not attracting experienced people to our communities, which are not well served. Thirdly, this measure risks to create an incredible gap between communities which are haves and those which have not. Imagine the disastrous consequences of drawing personnel into a hospital, have-not hospital. Finally, measures such as the ones being proposed will not draw any new doctors or nurses into a healthcare system. They will have to go elsewhere. This budget won't do anything to counter the departure from the profession of healthcare professionals. They are completely burnt out, and nor is the budget doing anything to deal with the long waiting times in Canadian emergency rooms. To take action on health, we need to deal with the workload that our professionals are facing. One of the priorities of this government should be to deal with poverty, because we all know that when people are poor, it's very difficult to be in good health. All international organizations, healthcare organizations, will tell you that the socioeconomic status of a person is a major determinant of their health. In my riding, the mining boom has given us a new breath of air into the riding, and I'm happy with that. However, it has also created an unprecedented housing crisis. The cost of lodging and housing has shot up in cities like Rouyn-Noranda, which has led to even greater poverty and more precarious situations for many families. In addition, this crisis has had detrimental impacts on students who are having trouble finding adequate housing and have to and this is in fact hindering the ability of the university and the colleges in the area to recruit students. Now let's talk about poverty. We can't forget the older people in my riding. Sometimes they're having trouble even sleeping because they can't make ends meet. Their incomes are not going up. When this government talks about increasing the GIS up to a maximum of $600 per year for a person living on his or her own, which means $50 per month, it's mocking seniors who are living in poverty. In 1983, when I was born, $50 a month wasn't even enough to get someone out of poverty. That was 1983, so think about the situation now. My region has also had to deal with unprecedented crises in the forestry and agricultural sectors. I talked about people in my riding who lost their full-time jobs and now have to deal with unstable jobs where they don't have benefits. For example, forestry workers at Tembec or agricultural workers for small companies which are struggling in face of national competition. That's why we would have liked to have seen tax credits for PMEs, small SMEs rather, for job creation, as opposed to tax cuts for large corporations that don't need them, so the jobs aren't sent elsewhere. In closing, I'd also like to talk about the First Nations living in my riding. Many of them have talked about the concerns that they face regarding health and education. From year to year, they are facing cuts to their healthcare programs and post-secondary education programs. It's time for this government to re-establish assistance to these communities and to put it at an acceptable level so that they can educate themselves and be healthy.
People in my region are proud of their region, and they would like the government to really support them. But instead, the government has chosen large polluting industries, and it has abandoned small rural communities that are in difficulty. I hope to be able to count on the cooperation of all members of the House to adopt practical solutions to make a real difference in Abitibi-Témiscamingue. I'm counting on our Prime Minister to uphold the mandate that has been given us as members to do our work in Parliament. 4.5 million Canadians have voted for the NDP. They voted to strengthen public pension plans, to improve health services, to help families make ends meet, to create new jobs in our economy. And they have chosen an official opposition that has the right priorities and will defend them. Our mandate is clear. We are intending to come up with practical solutions for families and to work together for results. We will oppose the government if it takes poor decisions, and this budget shows that tendency. I'm honored to have been chosen to serve the people of Abitibi-Témiscamingue, and I'm honored to be able to work with all the members here. We all come with different skills, different priorities, but we can choose to work together constructively. Otherwise, regions like mine will pay the price. I would therefore reach out to this government and ask the government to work together with us to make sure that this budget works for the interests of all Canadians. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Saint-Boniface, the Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to take a moment to welcome our new colleague to the House of Commons. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate something in response to what the NDP have raised a number of times, and that is they tend to be positive about certain aspects of the budget, but they need to give us time to implement the measures here. And I want to highlight investment in research and development. There is something positive in that. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to see that the Conservative budget is providing some funding for research and development in the forest sector. I find that small businesses often have to invest a huge amount to do this research. If somebody spends $10,000 for a return or a yield of $5,000, then that isn't worth it. It's important for small businesses to have access to funding, but then they have to have somebody who can apply for the funding.
Peg North.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, my question to the member is, and I appreciate that she was a healthcare worker, I understand, in terms of her earlier comments, is in regards to healthcare. The Bloc have a position in which they would prefer to see tax point transfers as opposed to cash transfers going into public health in the province of Quebec. Does the member have a personal opinion as to what she believes would be in Quebec's best interest?
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. What I can say is that with respect to the $4,000 refund available to people studying to be family doctors or nurses, people will actually lose out because there will be fewer loans, there will be lower rates of reimbursement in Quebec because there are more bursaries in order to keep debt lower in Quebec. Questions and comments?
For Thunder Bay Rainy River.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to welcome our colleague to the House, and congratulations to you, Madam Speaker, on your new role. The people of Thunder Bay Rainy River, the people I represent, have indicated that there are three most pressing issues facing them today. The first is affordability, the second is retirement security, and the third is health care. Madam Speaker, my question is regarding retirement security. There was a lot of talk about retirement security in the case of companies going bankrupt in the last Parliament, and I'm surprised in this budget there's virtually nothing about retirement, including the increasing of CPP, and I wonder if my colleague would comment on that particular issue.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. It is clear, in my opinion, that the pension plan has to provide all Canadians with a stable solution. People need to avoid being vulnerable. The government has to take steps to make sure that Canadian workers are rewarded for their hard work. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. A very brief question, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to ask my colleague to answer the question that she didn't answer when the parliamentary secretary asked it. There is a positive measure in this budget that is very important for Quebecers, and that is the reimbursement of $2.2 billion for harmonizing the sales tax. And I'd like to know from her what she thinks of the measure and whether she is going to make sure that this budget is passed so that this issue is settled once and for all. In 2009, the Bloc Québécois, I have to give the time to the Honourable Member to answer that question. You have less than 30 seconds. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm very pleased, yes, to see this solution being proposed to solve this dispute and reimburse Quebec for harmonizing its sales tax. But I think this was to be expected. This is only reasonable. I think this is one good measure in the budget, but there are a number of other problems that have not been addressed. But I am pleased to see that the Conservatives did include the measure in the budget.